In the last episode, Duke's anger subsides when he encounters Ellie as memories of his late wife come to mind. Ellie offers herself for blame and punishment, but Zachary interrupts and reassures her. Duke, seeing a resemblance between Ellie and his late wife, wonders about his wife's influence. Ellie encourages Zachary to leave and considers seeking forgiveness to protect him. When Ellie tries to apologize to Duke, he intervenes, sensing that she's trying to convey a message. Duke mentions Adelaide likely thinking of his late wife, suggesting a deeper connection. Now let's move forward in the story. Zachary shoulders the blame, asserting that everything is his fault and that Ellie is not involved. Despite Ellie's concern, he insists that he will do whatever it takes to protect her, even if it means using his powers. Duke responds with anger. Zachary expresses his understanding, acknowledging that his father lost someone because of him, which is why he endured his father's abuse for so long. He believed that was the only way to make amends because his father suffered due to him. He reflects on Ellie being his world, similar to how his father had someone in the past. However, today he witnessed many happy people and realized that the reason for their happiness was his role in protecting the land. He recognizes that his power can be useful. Zachary declares that he no longer wants to live as a monster and wishes to use his abilities to protect and make people happy. Zachary asserts his dual roles as the future Lord of the North, responsible for protecting the people, and as a husband, determined to safeguard his beloved wife, Ellie. He acknowledges that the battle he can't avoid is not about paying for past sins, but rather about fulfilling his responsibilities. Zachary also states that today marks the end of his tolerance for his father's abuse, driven by his desire to prevent Ellie from being sad. Duke penalizes Zachary with a 1-week probation for his actions. Zachary accepts the order with respect. Duke then grants them permission to leave. In a private moment, Ellie becomes emotional and holds Zachary tightly, blaming herself for the events. She believes that if it weren't for her, Zachary wouldn't have had to use his magic or face his father's punishment. Zachary, however, comforts her, expressing relief that she wasn't punished. He thanks her sincerely for her support. Ellie questions why Zachary is thankful when he suffered for her sake. Zachary explains that he's grateful because for the first time someone was on his side, and thanks to Ellie he could assert to his father that he's not a monster. He emphasizes that Ellie is a miracle in his life and that she saved him. This emotional exchange strengthens their bond. Throughout Zachary's 1-week probation, Ellie consistently visited him in his confined room. During one conversation, Ellie informs Zachary that all the troublemakers in the estate have been dealt with. Zachary expresses his intention to handle him once his probation ends. Ellie playfully points out his tendency to overwork, despite his claims of not being a workaholic. Zachary expresses concern for Ellie's safety due to the troublemakers, but Ellie downplays it, emphasizing the need to deal with them for the estate's security. Zachary wishes for time to pass quickly, and when Ellie asks why, he explains that once he becomes an adult and succeeds the title, he'll be better equipped to keep her safe. 3 years have passed and Ellie will soon turn 17, while Zachary will be 19 after the winter. During this time, a delicate peace has settled. Watching Zachary in a sword fight, Ellie recognizes him and praises his performance. Zachary wins the match, and his opponent acknowledges him as the young Duke. Zachary, in turn, compliments his opponent, Sir Podin. After the match, Ellie congratulates Zachary, expressing awe at his skills. Zachary notices her presence and acknowledges her arrival. Ellie presents gifts to the knights and inquires about their well-being. When Zachary notices her in the cold, he asks why she's outside. Ellie confidently states that she's there to support her husband. This prompts Zachary to blush. The knights playfully tease Zachary about his blush, remarking on how even the renowned warrior of the north can turn red. Zachary responds by jokingly telling them all to be quiet. Zachary holds Ellie's hand and suggests they leave. Ellie tries to cheer him up by mentioning that eating something sweet can improve his mood. Zachary questions why Ellie keeps giving snacks to the knights. Ellie explains that she wants to maintain good relations with the knights for Zachary's sake. Zachary expresses his concern about the knights' intentions, mentioning instances where some of them looked at Ellie with sly eyes. Ellie inquires if Zachary is now on good terms with the knights. Zachary responds that they're not that close. Ellie seems pleasantly surprised and reflects on how Zachary has improved in expressing himself and showing more varied facial expressions. She also has a playful moment where she wonders if she was almost drooling in admiration. Ellie admires the beauty of the castle and expresses her contentment at being with Zachary there. She appreciates the enduring elegance of the old Hessenweitz's castle and the Duke's expansive territory, recognizing Zachary as its rightful heir. Ellie reflects on how her meeting with Zachary was made possible by the involvement of the Imperial family. Ellie gets something in her eye and Zachary notices. Concerned, Zachary offers to take a look, and while doing so, he reflects on how Ellie has become even more beautiful over time. Zachary gently blows into her eye to assist in clearing whatever is bothering her. Ellie confirms that the discomfort in her eye has subsided after Zachary's help. She remarks on how time has passed quickly and suggests they start heading back. Zachary mentions his dinner plans with his father, but admits he doesn't want to go. Despite his reluctance, Ellie advises him that he should go. Ellie encouraged Zachary to get up and head back, mentioning the promised chocolate eclairs. Zachary playfully asked if Ellie could hold his hand, and Ellie, in surprise, remarked that he should act his age. Zachary responded by reminding her that their marriage couldn't be revoked. Ellie giggled and joked about feeling like she was in a fraudulent marriage as they continued walking together. Zachary and Ellie greeted Duke Hessenweitz with a bow, and he responded with a simple yes. 3 years ago, the incident when Zachary was on the verge of a rampage had changed the dynamics between them. While the Duke still makes sarcastic remarks about Zachary being a monster, he had stopped being violent towards him. Zachary had also stopped seeking acknowledgement from his father and established a boundary between them. However, the overall relationship between the three of them remained strained. Ellie reflects on her role as a buffer between Zachary and Duke, acknowledging that it's an improvement compared to their first dinner together. She remembers how tense and menacing the atmosphere was during that initial dinner, to the point where she had an upset stomach and couldn't eat. During their dinner, Zachary inquires if Ellie is feeling cold, but she assures him she's not. The Duke, however, calls a servant to add more firewood to the fireplace, showing consideration for Ellie's comfort. Ellie notices this change in the Duke's behavior as he speaks to her in a much kinder manner. When he inquires about the temperature, Ellie thanks him politely for his concern. The Duke reflects on his relationship with Adele and wonders if they could have had a relationship like Zachary and Ellie. He then calls Zachary and expresses his desire to suppress the barbarians. Ellie, taken aback by this, interjects and reminds the Duke that he hasn't been back from the war for long, implying that perhaps it's too early to make such decisions or plans. The barbarians are minority groups located outside of the Duke's decree, and they have historically targeted the dukedom. Zachary has been involved in numerous battles over the past 3 years to defend the dukedom. This has caused Ellie to worry about his safety. Due to periodic suppressions by the dukedom, the barbarians have seen their taxes reduced in recent years, and some of them have expressed a desire for peace. Ellie contemplates the situation, concerned about the potential clash between the barbarians and Zachary. She questions why Zachary has to personally engage in battle when the knights could handle it. The Duke acknowledges this, but explains that the barbarians from the north have raised their concerns, implying there may be specific reasons for Zachary's involvement. This leaves Ellie in further contemplation. The imperial family's plan to create a rift between the Duke and his successor by introducing a companion from the Blanchette family didn't go as intended. Instead, it seems to have strengthened their father-son relationship. The imperial family, who initially aimed for the opposite outcome, now find themselves unable to distance the Duke in this manner. Ellie realizes that the Duke wants her to show sincerity towards the imperial family to improve her chances of gaining a title in the future. Zachary questions when they started being mindful of the imperial family, to which the Duke explains that while the Hessenweitz family has rights to their title, members of the imperial family can reclaim the throne at any time. He emphasizes that those who have someone to protect sometimes need to earn their position. Ellie acknowledges the situation. Ellie feels responsible for the situation, but Zachary reassures her, saying it's not her fault. The Duke, however, explains that the imperial family is wary of Hessenweitz and wants to create opportunities for trouble, which would allow them to intervene. The issue with the barbarians coincidentally overlapped with this, and the Hessenweitz family's current influence is quite limited. Zachary supports Ellie and tells her not to feel pressured. However, seeing Ellie's sadness, Zachary also feels upset. Meanwhile, the servant offers chocolate eclairs, but Ellie declines them. Ellie went to the garden without wearing a robe despite the chilly weather. Zachary, worried about her, goes to the garden and finds her sitting up in a tree. He asks when she arrived. Ellie asks when Zachary arrived, but he scolds her for being in a dangerous situation. When she asks if she can come down, he tells her to stay there, but she wobbles and falls from the tree. Luckily, Zachary catches her. Zachary asked Ellie what she had intended to do if she got hurt. Ellie apologized and asked if he was worried about her. Zachary responded by asking why she had climbed the tree. Ellie explained that she had climbed it to return a fallen baby bird to its nest. When Ellie inquired about when she could leave, Zachary jokingly replied that he wouldn't let her go due to her dangerous tree climbing. Zachary seated Ellie on the bench and inquired why she appeared so despondent. He asked if it was because of something their father had mentioned during dinner. Ellie, with a saddened tone, replied that her sadness stemmed from her actions. Zachary, puzzled, sought clarification, to which Ellie explained that she believed her actions were causing him to be repeatedly drawn into the battlefield. She expressed her apologies for the suffering he seemed to endure because of her. Zachary, while covering her with a blanket, told Ellie that she was the one who had saved him and emphasized that he was not a monster. He had someone who relied on him. He appreciated that she was the only one who had seen him as a human and cherished her deeply, encouraging her not to underestimate herself. Ellie, blushing, thought to herself that the words couldn't have been more perfect. She then rested her head on Zachary's shoulder and expressed her happiness in being able to spend time with him. Zachary responded positively, saying that he felt the same way about spending time with Ellie. As the day of battle preparations approached, Duke encouraged Zachary and his army, urging them to win and return safely, to which all the knights agreed. Ellie stepped forward and addressed Zachary by name, expressing her concern. She asked him to ensure that no harm came to him, not even a hair, as she would be very upset if it did. Zachary, still smiling, reassured her, promising to protect himself. He then kissed her on the forehead. Blushing, Ellie mentioned the presence of many people. Zachary acknowledged the upcoming month-long separation and bid her farewell. Ellie held Zachary's hand tightly, reluctant to let go. Duke noticed Ellie beginning to walk away and called out to her. Zachary relayed Duke's message, confirming his response. Duke then explained to Ellie that he had been considering the need for someone to provide her with education. Confused, Ellie asked about this education, to which Duke clarified that there wasn't much to learn in order to manage the internal affairs of the Duke's household. Ellie reflected on this, realizing that Duke saw her as the hostess of the family. However, Duke brought up a complication. The imperial family recommended Countess Lauren to be Ellie's educator. Intrigued, Ellie inquired about Countess Lauren. Duke informed her that Countess Lauren was Zachary's aunt and also held a significant position in his wife's clan, Count Lorraine. Duke also mentioned that Zachary had expressed his intention to gain favor with the imperial family. Duke reflected on the Duke's interest in his sister and suggested that his sister might find happiness in marrying the Duke as well. He mentioned that only after her marriage did he realize she had a fiancé she deeply loved. Duke noted Count Lorraine's rise in status within the imperial family due to the marriage. He expressed his belief in Ellie's capability to fulfill her role as the Duke's wife. In response, Ellie graciously acknowledged her understanding of her responsibilities and thanked Duke. Ellie thought about the opportunity presented by the Duke. She recognized it as a chance to transition from her previous role as an ordinary woman to preparing for her future as the next Duke's wife. This transformation would require her to acquire skills in managing internal affairs. Ellie emphasized the importance of not being swayed by the influence of the education overseer designated by the imperial family. Mary informed Ellie that Countess Lauren had come to visit. In response, Ellie questioned the Countess's timing, wondering if she had intentionally arrived during mealtime. Ellie thought to herself, realizing that the Countess likely wanted Ellie to stop eating and greet her personally. She reminded herself to maintain proper decorum and decided to go and meet the Countess to see her face. Countess Lauren greeted Ellie as Lady Blanchett, and Ellie acknowledged the greeting. Ellie privately expressed irritation at the Countess's deliberate use of the wrong title to establish authority. Countess Lauren complimented Lady Blanchett's beauty and commented on perceived weaknesses in the southern region. Ellie responded with a brief "yeah," but internally, she found the situation quite annoying. Countess Lauren reassured Ellie that she would support her and noted Ellie's limited knowledge about the Duke. She pointed out that she personally visited as per the orders of His Majesty the Emperor and claimed to know the Duke better than anyone else, given her sister-in-law's role as the hostess of the castle. Ellie expressed her thanks. In her thoughts, Ellie questioned the Countess's choice of timing for the visit during a meal, pondering whether someone genuinely interested in caring for others would do so. She also inquired about any specific reasons behind Countess Lauren's actions. Countess Lauren mentioned that she considered Hessenweitz her home because she was the aunt of the little Duke, which prompted Ellie to privately question if she was going too far with this sentiment. Lauren expressed her intention to explain the history of the Dukes, particularly regarding the winter season infested with demons. She highlighted that the little Duke, unlike the weaker southern nobles, personally went to battle these demonic beasts as winter ended. Ellie thought to herself, sarcastically wondering if Countess Lauren believed she didn't already know this information. Countess Lauren remarked that in the north, there were many renowned families and numerous noble ladies were willing to support the little Duke. She mentioned that if given the opportunity, she would have considered sending her daughter to the Duke. Ellie, while sipping her tea, acknowledged with a simple, "Oh, I see." Lauren continued, expressing genuine concern for Ellie's situation. She pointed out the differences in social status between the Blanchetts, known as nameless viscounts from the south, and Ellie's current role as the hostess of the Great Duke. Lauren questioned whether Ellie had ever felt uncomfortable about the significant gap in family background. Ellie, taken aback, responded with a puzzled "what?" Ellie was taken aback by Countess Lauren's comments about her family and felt it was disrespectful for her to speak negatively about them, especially given that she was Zachary's aunt. She expressed her displeasure with Countess Lauren's behavior. Countess Lauren was offended by Ellie's response, finding it rude. Ellie clarified that she had expected advice based on family ties since Countess Lauren had been chosen directly by the imperial family and assumed she would offer guidance with a sense of both vulnerability and warmth as befitting someone from the South. Ellie calmly remarked that she wasn't sure who was being rude in this conversation. Countess Lauren, raising her voice, asserted her intent to provide advice. Ellie, in response, questioned the value of Countess Lauren's advice, deeming it inappropriate to spread rumors about a husband's personal life. She clarified that Lady Blanchett had been chosen by the Duke on the Emperor's recommendation, despite their physical distance. This choice followed the Duke rejecting many other suitors. Ellie sought clarification on her interpretation of Countess Lauren's words, asking if she had understood them correctly. Countess Lauren, visibly upset, denied any malicious intent and questioned Ellie's interpretation. Ellie calmly conveyed that if Countess Lauren's words had negative intentions or were insulting, she would discuss it with her husband and father-in-law. Countess Lauren, flustered, quickly corrected herself, addressing Ellie as Lady Blanchett. Ellie firmly corrected her, emphasizing that she should be referred to as Lady Hessenweitz. Ellie asserted that she had become a member of the Duke of Hessenweitz by the Emperor's command a long time ago. She determined to use whatever authority she had, even if she lacked power. Ellie conveyed that Countess Lauren didn't intend to disregard the Emperor's arranged marriage and suggested that the Countess might have made a mistake concerning a trivial issue. She questioned the appropriateness of the treatment she was receiving, considering she was the legally recognized wife of the young Duke. Ellie emphasized that such treatment was an insult to her husband. Countess Lauren firmly responded, saying no. Ellie, while staring at Countess Lauren, expressed her satisfaction that they agreed on something. She then asked for the Countess's help. Lauren, appearing fearful, inquired about the nature of Ellie's request. Ellie clarified that she wanted the Countess's guidance in managing the Duke's internal affairs, but also voiced her concerns about whether it was appropriate for a relative to be involved in such matters, suggesting the need for boundaries. Countess Lauren responded with surprise. Ellie took on the responsibility of managing the Duke's internal affairs and asked Countess Lauren for her assistance. Countess Lauren, trembling, agreed to help Ellie with this task and addressed her as Lady Hessenweitz. Afterwards, Ellie engaged in a battle of wills with Countess Lauren. Despite the Countess's attempts to interfere in the Duke's internal affairs, her efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. In a fit of anger, Countess Lauren demanded that the door be opened, despite it being off-limits as the lady's room. She asserted her authority as the educator of Lady Hessenweitz, took the key from the maid, and entered the room. Countess Lauren then had thoughts of envy towards Adele, who had recently married and become a duchess, wishing she had been married well, implying that Ellie had been living a fortunate life drawing pictures. Countess Lauren reprimanded the maid for not following her instructions to replace the rugs on the floor with new ones. The maid, under pressure, agreed to inform Lady Ellie about the task. Outside the room, Ellie and her maid Mary overheard the conversation. Lauren expressed anger at the maid's response and proceeded to slap her, causing her to fall. Ellie and Mary entered the room, and Ellie, visibly upset, demanded to know the reason for all the commotion. Ellie questioned the situation, prompting Lauren to claim she was teaching a lesson to a rude servant. Ellie acknowledged this with skepticism and dismissed her maid. Ellie expressed her disapproval of the violent behavior, deeming it unbecoming of a noble lady. Lauren, however, advised Ellie to assert authority over the servants more firmly. Ellie firmly reminded Lauren that it was not her place to interfere, as they had previously agreed. Lauren insisted she was trying to assist Lady Hessenweitz. Ellie questioned Lauren's actions, concerned they might displease her father-in-law. She then directed Lauren to leave the room before the situation reached her father-in-law's knowledge. Lauren left without a word, and Ellie reflected on the room's past as the previous duchess's spacious abode. Ellie observed the abundance of paintings in the room and inquired about them. Mary explained that the previous duchess had a hobby of painting. Ellie expressed her curiosity about the previous duchess and her desire to see some trace of her, as neither the Duke nor Zachary talked about her. Mary mentioned that the duchess was skilled at painting but had few finished works. Ellie discovered a croquis book with sketches of the Duke's castle employees but noticed that there were no pictures of Zachary or the Duke. She wondered if there was a reason behind this. Mary informed her that there was a portrait of the previous duchess in the portrait room. Ellie was intrigued by the mention of the portrait room. Ellie considered if the room mentioned earlier served as a place for portraits of all the Duke's people, including where her and Zachary's portrait might be hung. However, she admitted she had never entered that room before. She inquired about the previous duchess's portraits and wondered whose portraits she painted. Mary suggested it might be a painting of the young Duke, but admitted she had never been in that room despite working there for a long time. Ellie, understanding, noted that the head maid typically managed that room and concluded that she now understood the situation. Ellie informed the Duke that she had heard he called for her. The Duke, addressing her by name, mentioned Count Roland's wife's interference with his wife's room. Ellie apologized for the incident and assured the Duke it wouldn't happen again. The Duke, not reprimanding her, expressed his concern about Countess Lauren's arrogance and misuse of her status. Ellie took responsibility for the situation, admitting her thoughtlessness. The Duke criticized Countess Lauren for her audacity, given her status as the queen of the imperial family, and mentioned the portrait room, asking if Ellie was curious about it, which was why he had called her. Ellie responded with understanding. The Duke acknowledged Ellie's curiosity about the portrait room and mentioned he had plans to show it to her soon. Ellie was pleased to hear this, and the Duke assured her that it was indeed time for her to see that room. He also mentioned that Zachary holds a deep admiration for her. Ellie noticed an item on the table and speculated if it was medicine. She asked the Duke if he was feeling unwell. The Duke clarified that it wasn't medicine and instructed her to leave, to which Ellie agreed before departing. Ellie was surprised by the presence of a medicine bottle, considering she had previously believed that the Duke had no interest in her. However, the Duke assured her that he was fine.